Welcome to the Mustard Seed Media video podcast. My name is Bob, and this is the podcast for Drupal web designers. On today's episode, we're going to talk about the Nodequeue module. So often, I'll have clients that come to me after a particular section of a site is built, and I will have built it with views. And maybe we'll sort things by in that view by post date or by title or by type or any number of other ways that we might decide to sort that view. And they'll come to me and say, wait a minute, I want to be able to sort this view however I want. I want this particular item on top and this other particular item below it, but they don't really have any logic to them. It's all sort of just based on what the client wants and what they need. There's no pattern involved. So we usually have two different options when we look at that. The first one is a popular module called draggable views. And you should check that module out. It's really cool. It is a plugin for views which allows you to drag rows in a table. The problem is it's just for tables. At least as far as I've experienced it, it's only for tables. So if I want any other kind of view, node teasers, maybe a grid, anything else, you're kind of in trouble. You're stuck with a table at that point. So instead, we're going to look at Nodequeue module today. Nodequeue allows us to build lists of content and order them however we want, and then our view will reflect that. I'm going to show you how to build all of those today. There's some other uses for Nodequeue that we're not going to go over today. For example, Nodequeue will sort taxonomy listing pages. It'll do a bunch of other stuff, but we're going to focus on a basic setup and use of views today. So let's dig right in. Drupal.org/project/Nodequeue. Go there, check it out, read all of this stuff. We got some cool stuff like organic groups integration. These smart queues are really neat once you start using them. So check those out, some Solar integration. All kinds of cool stuff. As I mentioned, taxonomy integration. This does exist for 5 and 6, but I haven't used it for 5, so I'll assume that it just works the same. So here on our development site, we just got a bunch of randomly created nodes, right? And so what we want to do is we want to build a view that will show us these nodes, say on a particular page. So I'm going to build a new view, and I'm just going to call this view test, and I'm going to add it. Now you'll have to bear with me. This is views 3, which I've barely touched, so I may get confused where stuff is for a little bit. But basically all we're going to do is we're going to add a page view. A bunch of this stuff is just basic view stuff I'm going to do. I'm going to call my page test. And I'm going to change from fields to node view just so I can see stuff real easy. And so by doing that, you can see we've got all of our content here. So I'm going to save that. And I didn't put any sort criteria on it or anything. You can easily do that. Put on any filters you want. And then I'm going to go to that page. And here is the resulting view. Pretty boring, looks just like our home page. So now let's say we want to order these, and at the same time we also want to limit them based on our own particular whims or criteria. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to build a new Nodequeue. So once you enable the Nodequeue module, I'm just using the core Nodequeue module. There's a couple other ones that comes with it, but this is just the core module. I'll have a Nodequeue item here. And the first thing I'm going to want to do is go to settings. And there's got some cool settings here. So you can administer your node's position in the node queue, or it's the fact that it does exist in the node queue from the node itself. And you can do that by creating a menu tab. These are your local tabs that are shown on each node for each node that is allowed to belong to a node queue. We'll show you that in a second. You can also include a column on that page for how many nodes are allowed in the queue. Each node queue, you can say there's only 5 nodes allowed in this queue, or there's 10 nodes allowed in this queue, or however else you want to do it. And then you can name that tab. So on your node you'll have view tab, edit tab, and then anything else you want. I'll just rename it so you can see that. And then we can automatically create views for each node queue we create. This just gives you a little head start. It's going to automatically create views for you. I'm going to leave that unchecked just so I can show you from scratch how we can integrate it with our queue. So I'm going to save that configuration. Now the first thing I'm going to do after I do that is if we go to our node queue list, we'll say we have no node queues, right? So we want to add one. And all we're going to do is we're going to give it a title. We can set the queue size. If we leave it as 0, we can have as many nodes in this queue as we want. Or we can limit it to, say, 5 nodes or 10 nodes or whatever we want to do. Read this for reverse in admin view. Basically, node queues by default are ordered in a particular way from top to bottom, and you can flip that. One of the things you'll notice with node queues is some people see them one way, some people see them a different way. Some people see something on the top as something that should be at the beginning of a list. Some people see it as the beginning of a list, so it should list at the end. All kinds of different things. It gives you options to flip it both ways. Now we want to create some text for an add to queue link. This is going to be the link that we're going to click to add a particular node to a queue. So we'll say add to test node queue, and then remove from test node queue. And what types of nodes are we allowed to have in this queue? I'm just going to check all of them, just because we're allowed to have all types. So there we've created our node queue. Now, something you're going to notice here is that we have infinite number of nodes allowed in here. We have our title. We have subqueues. I'm not going to go over those right now, but each node queue can actually have subqueues. This is really useful when you start to use taxonomy, because you can have taxonomy terms that have subqueues of subtaxonomy terms, all that kind of stuff. So if we view this node queue, you're going to see that there's nothing in it. A couple different ways I can add nodes to this queue. I could just start typing a node title, and it'll autocomplete. But instead, I'm going to go to my list of content. This is just my home page. And I can see I have this add to test node queue now on all of my stuff. We can do it from there. Or if we go to a node, we now have a node queue tab. And I can go here and I can say add to queue. If there's multiple queues, which you will eventually have once you end up doing this, you'll have them listed here and you can decide which queue to add it to. And you can always get to the queue very quickly by clicking that. So now here's our node queue. It's got 3 nodes in it, right? And so now let's use this node queue in a view. So I'm going to go back to our view that we had. And the first thing that I'm going to do to be able to use a node queue in a view is I'm going to add a relationship to that node queue. So I'm going to go to relationships, choose node queue. And I'm going to call this my test node queue. You can require this relationship. I'm not going to, because there might be some places in your views that you don't, some filters you don't want to use it on, or some fields. So you don't always have to use that. Now you can limit to 1 or more queues. If you got 20 queues here, you're probably going to want to limit this to 1 of those. So here I'm just going to limit it to the one that I created. And now something to remember about node queues, and this is where different people can use them in different ways. But remember that when you're in views, the node queue isn't necessarily a filter, or it doesn't have to be a filter. You can use it to filter your nodes, which I'm going to show you here, but it doesn't have to be. You can set up your views filters to filter just like you would normally, to say only show specific content types, only show promoted to front page stuff, whatever you want to do. The kicker is to remember that just because something's in a node queue doesn't mean that it has to show up in your view. You can filter stuff out. So you might have 5 nodes in your node queue, and maybe 3 of them are blog items, and you can set up your view to only show blog items. And even though there's 5 nodes in that queue, it's only going to show the blog items when you actually present your view. So make this mental separation between node queues being filters and node queues being a sorting mechanism. And you can use it for both. Here in this example, I'm going to actually use it as a filter as well. So for my filters, I'm going to choose my node queue, and I'm going to filter that it's actually in the queue. So in queue, and then you would choose your relationship, your actual queue there, and I'm going to update it. So now you can see that my node, or my preview, just went down to only 3 nodes because it's only the ones in the queue. And then of course, this is the crucial part, I want to sort by my node queue. So I'm going to sort by the position in the queue. I'm going to sort it ascending. And so now if I save this, and then I go to my views page, you'll see that it's now showing only the 3 items that I put in my queue. And it's also showing them in the order that they are in my queue. So let's say I put this one that starts with a T, whatever Latin word that happens to be, at the top, and I save my queue, and I go back and I refresh. That's now at the top of this list. Nodequeues are awesome. There are so many ways you can use them, so many different possibilities with them. This is the bare basics of it. I just wanted to show you how to use it to make sort of these arbitrary lists and views. It's really good stuff. If you have any comments on this, jump over to mustardseedmedia.com/podcast. I believe this is episode 44, and leave your comments there. We've installed Discuss or Discus or however you want to say it, so you can now comment with your Facebook account or your Twitter account or anything else you want. And share some feedback, help some people out. Share some ways you've used Nodequeue. As always, if you appreciate the podcast, there is a chip-in link. You can throw a couple dollars at the podcast. Those are always so much appreciated. It really makes it worth the time to produce these things, and hopefully they're helpful. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, all that stuff's over at mustardseedmedia.com, and we'll see you over there. In the meantime, have a good week.